Welcome. Welcome. I'm so excited to talk with you today. For my last podcast, I got this sentence, if you want to enter into my world, you're welcome. So, yes, I want to enter into your world today. I want to enter into the world of your family. So maybe we can start there. You can introduce your family and
Right.
your connection to special needs and friendship.
Well, my name is Rinke. I am Dutch. I am 31 years old.
Yes.
Mother of two children.
Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
married to Job, my husband. And we have two children, Judah and Yaeli.
Mm-hmm.
Judah is 2.5 years old, and Yaeli is one, just turned 1 year old. So, and Judah has Down syndrome, which we didn't know when he was born. I just felt like his face reminded me of another boy with Down syndrome, and I asked, and they had noticed as well. And within an hour, it was confirmed that it was it would be very strange if DNA testing would give another result. So
Mm-hmm.
he clearly just had Down syndrome, and he still has it. So that's and actually I don't feel, because it's my first child, so maybe he just, I didn't have anything to compare him to, so it's always been very normal for me. He's healthy, his organs function very well, he's socially very able to connect to people. So he is my normal. And now my second child is constantly amazing me, like, oh my gosh, you're just doing this like by yourself. We don't have to, point you toward the ID, or she's sitting in certain postures that I know, that with Down syndrome, you could literally tick off a box if someone would sit like that. And she just does it, doesn't even think about it. So for me, she's more like, what's happening? And he was so
It's like a
normal to
magical
me.
child that just does everything.
Yeah, she surprises me, and Judah was always normal. So that's funny, because he's the first.
Would you say that helped in seeing him for who he is and not necessarily getting caught up in a lot of comparison?
Yeah, I think it helps. I felt maybe to share
Yeah.
the way
Mm-hmm.
he looks with you guys. So I'm sharing my screen. I put a photo on here.
Yes.
Oh, this is my son.
He's
So
just
that's
so adorable.
yeah. So now you know what we are talking about.
So pretty. So good.
Yeah. So you asked, if that helped for me to
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 not
normalize it,
compare or
to not
to.
compare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so, because otherwise I think I would have realized how hard he had to work to
Mm-hmm.
develop. Whereas for me, it always felt very effortless. I mean, it didn't feel effortless because we had physiotherapy and speech and
Yes.
language therapy. We had that, and now we realized that his vision is not impeccable, so he needs glasses. Which my friends just are so excited that he now is going to get this little. Like, they would be so disappointed if his eyes would have 20/20 vision.
Mm-hmm.
So so he needs that, but I think if I would have had my daughter first and see how easily she does everything, then maybe it would have sometimes hurt me to see how hard he has to work,
Yeah.
But now it hasn't, and he's at a basic level now. He is 2.5 years old. He just started walking. I mean, he doesn't walk like distances, but he walks through the house, and he can walk to the car. He falls down twice, but he gets up and he walks ahead, and almost runs onto the street. And he doesn't run, but he walks fast. And I'm carrying 20 things, so I can, he feels fast. And I don't know, he's starting to talk. So if he wants something, he can make it clear to me most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So these are basic things that feel so crucial to me. And I think I would have struggled if that wasn't possible for him. But because I feel that he has the ability to develop himself enough to be able to express himself, make clear what he needs, and not be totally dependent on other people understanding him, having time and strength to do stuff for him. Yeah, so it's always been actually easy on me. And I think if my daughter would have been the oldest, I would have sometimes felt for him more, like, oh man, I wish, I mean, I see how hard you have to work. And I've never really daily been able to compare him to anything. So yeah, that really helps.
That's beautiful. And you, because, well, we know each other, you also had the example quite close by of a kid just 1 year older.
Right.
How has that affected? How has that helped into, because you also said at some point that you were entering into this whole new world. Like there's care, like school, not a school, but like other facilities that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
It helped you into entering into this whole new world.
Yeah.
Knowing.
I recently I was asked to do a podcast with a Dutch politician, and they had, their idea was for me to talk to the politician about what he needs to improve in the care that my son gets in this country. But I was like, there's literally nothing I can complain about. I mean, they take care of my son so well, but I know that Down syndrome in a way has a really easy position. There are so many other syndromes that are less well known or don't have like a almost positive stigma on them. So you can see when you look at him, he's like, oh, he has Down syndrome, it's so easy, I don't have to prove anything. And it's a very approachable syndrome, so it's for him the doors fling open. The hospital daycare that we don't pay for, I mean, they would even pick him up with a little bus if we would ask. It's ridiculous. I love it, and it's so good for him, and I can totally understand why this is so important, but there's nothing for me to complain about. We get calls like, hey, have you actually considered doing this or doing that? And we have a case manager in the hospitals. But I do think that even though practically things are well arranged in the Netherlands, in our city especially, it's not the same everywhere. I was thinking about this today, funny that you asked, that I was like, how would I have felt about being Judah's mother if I wouldn't have had my friends just across the street raising a son with Down syndrome 1 year older than my son? We had similar friends in common, but we weren't friends. I mean, they had 4 children. They had so much on their mind. Their youngest son has Down syndrome, had 2 ASVDs in his heart, like holes in his heart that needed surgery. Then he got a pneumonia. So they had a most intense year when we just moved in. And so they sent us a postcard, and we didn't even reply, and we just said hello on the street. But then we got Judah, and when he was born, we realized he has Down syndrome. So we sent them a text message like, hey guys, we have a little surprise for you. Because the one thing we were in contact about was daycare. They had a host parent that they have in their home, that would come in their home and take care of the 4 children while these friends were at work. And we had agreed that Judah would join their children on that Thursday. So Judah would have been their son's friend, Victor. His name is Victor. And then we texted them like, you will never believe this, but on Thursday, Victor is going to have not only a friend, but he's just going to have the most special friend. We just birthed you a child with Down syndrome. Congratulations. I think Judah was 2 years old or something. We were still in the hospital, and we were really excited about telling them this. And then a week later, I spoke to Victor's mom. They were so like, they were like, we're crying all day long. They were just wrecks, messes. Yeah. They were like, and they wanted to do everything for us. Like, we got food, and she said, well, you will never believe this, but the day before you gave birth, I was just talking to the Lord, just as you do, like not even praying, but more like chatting to the Lord. And I was telling the Lord that I would really like a friend for Victor, his age, because I know children with Down syndrome, but they were all years older. And then like a day later, your son is born. She said, I feel like I feel shy to tell you, because it's not like I prayed for Judah to have Down syndrome, but I was so moved. She said, I mean, they prayed for the holes in his heart to disappear and everything. Well, the holes are still there, but then they prayed for a friend, and a day later they had their friend, so then on Thursdays they were together, and I don't know how I would have felt about, if I would have felt maybe more lonely or something if I hadn't had these friends in my life, because they moved 10 minutes away from us now. But I mean, we see one another every week, and there's a really special bond between all of us. And it's just interesting how subtle it is, the way you talk about that your child is different. But almost always when someone else mentions it, it feels like they don't know what they're talking about. But when they mention it, you always know that you know what you're talking about. So sometimes you can say things to one another that you wouldn't say to other people, because I'm scared they misinterpret it or see Judah as a burden, which he isn't. And when I say something to them, or they say something to me, I really know what they mean. So it's a very safe place to sometimes say something that you wouldn't say to others to protect your child. he's not a burden. But sometimes things are hard, but he's not a burden. And that's very, people easily say, well, it must be tough. Well, it's not tough, but sometimes my heart feels like a little ache. And his parents really understand that.
There is a difference, and you want to share it with everyone. Like, you want to share it with all of your friends. You want to be open about it. Yet on the same time, because it is different, like, you don't want him to be different, but yet on the same time, there is an acknowledgement of, like, there is certain things that are just different.
Yeah.
And my friends who have, two, as medical term, typical kids, they don't have that experience. So you don't share
project their assumptions, even though they don't mean to. I would do the same. If they had a child with a syndrome that I don't know anything about and it's not my child, I would probably project my assumptions on them, even if I don't realize. As a mother of a child with a syndrome, you feel it immediately. You feel, oh, now you see the syndrome and you don't see my child. Like the order is different. You see a syndrome and the child behind, but it's always first the child and it has a syndrome. And it's just, even maybe the fear of misrepresenting him sometimes would even make me more tight than I need to be, maybe.
So would you say that that's something that you really try to do? Like, you want to protect him? You want to protect how people see him?
Yeah. I realized this last summer when we were camping in the Netherlands and we were on a field. We thought it would be nice because the children can crawl, but they can't get lost. But I'm never doing that again, at least, not for now. I need to mature in this, because I felt like I was everybody's television. Like, they were looking into our tent. Wow, how would they do this, with this child? And they are interested. But it makes me very self-aware, because if I'm tired, which you get with two children, my children's age.
Yeah. 2 under the age of 3.
You do get tired. But you don't want people to see, because I'm like, you will blame my son, you'll be like, yeah, see, like, they're happy, but it's a little bit rough with a child like that. There's everything in me wants to prevent someone from thinking that. So I put up a happy face all day long. Like, it's not human. I was so tired after a week, and I was like, why I'm so tired? I needed to analyze this later. It's like, I've been performing for these people on my field. Because I don't want them to think that Judah is a burden. So I'm like, I'm so happy. I'm full of energy. And even if he pulls his sister's hair, which every child should just be, which is annoying. When I would even, I would tell him off, but I wouldn't show people that I sometimes get a little tired of telling him 20 times a day that he shouldn't pull his sister's hair, because I am performing sometimes, and I realize it leads nowhere and I shouldn't be doing it, but it's really hard to stop it. I'm not camping that way again until I mature in this, because I'm not able to shut those people off.
Yeah. So, and you said, like, they're interested and they're constantly looking at you. Can you tell more about that experience?
Oh man, I can give you an example of how you get confirmation. Like, the people next to us, she would always come over and talk to Judah in, like, a little bit of a patronizing way. I felt like a granny, but you have people who talk to children with a special voice and stuff, and I'm always like, why are you doing this? I mean, you can talk with your normal voice. But then at the end but I was like, yeah, but maybe she just really likes little children, and just leave her. And then at the end, they gave us a present, and it was wrapped, and she was like, yeah, your daughter can unpack it, but it's actually for your son. And they were in their 60s, and the husband was a bit awkward, and she was like a sort of tense. And she was like, yeah, because I saw this, and I really felt like I wanted to give this to you. And so we sort of unpacked this, and it's like a sign with a text on it. It's like a tin sign, that you can hang up, and it's something like about you can sleep in peace because your parents are watching over you and stuff. And she got a bit emotional, and she was like sort of trying to explain to me in her own way that, yeah, she gave this to Judah, but actually to us, because we would have to watch over him all our lives. And I was like, but she didn't mention the word Down syndrome, It was all like talking around the issue. And sort of, I did feel her heart that she just wants to encourage us. maybe was moved by the way that we're family, and she just was moved by Judah. And I understand that people who are extra vulnerable or wear their vulnerability on the outside, that we all try to hide it, but it's on his outside. It's a moving thing. It's a beautiful thing, and it moves in a beautiful way. But all the effort she took to sort of say such a simple thing to us and buy us a gift because our son has Down syndrome. I also did feel that there were many assumptions underneath the gift, and that she was moved by assumptions that she had, that it must be hard for us, or well, it was like very special that we were so happy because, it's not normal to be happy when your son has Down syndrome. So that must take extra character. Or I just felt all those things. It was so awkward because I wanted to throw the gift out and be like, we don't need your gift. We're actually really fine. Judah's amazing. Like his sister is amazing. And at the same time, I did feel her heart. And I was like, well, thank you, for trying to encourage me. I actually don't need it. But so it was just really awkward.
Yeah.
And they would never buy such a gift for the people on the other side of their caravan with 4 children that are medically irregular children.
Or what would be something that you would say, like, okay, she's doing stuff on assumptions.
Yeah.
What would be a better way, or what would have helped you more?
Well, a part of me thinks there's actually no way to avoid it. I do it myself. I do think like our brains are, even when children grow up, you just know in the weeks in which their brain develops the ability to categorize, and you need it to make sense of the world. Something with white and black is a cow, but then you realize, oh, it can also be a cat, and then you have to, our brain does that. So when you see something that you cannot categorize, your brain, you just pay extra attention because your brain needs to put it into a box, because you need to know how to behave. That's how you recognize danger. Like you just feel, oh, this is not normal, and then you categorize this danger, and you fight, freeze, and all this mechanism is part of why people look at Judah for a few seconds longer, and why I look at someone in a wheelchair probably in a different way that I look at someone walking on 2 legs. And I'm ashamed by saying so, but I do, and it's not even, I do it before I realize. It's just my brain before my thought can analyze what my brain is doing. It's already happened. The seconds have happened. Like the person already noticed being noticed. So I do this all the time. So I don't really blame people for it. And I also think it's unavoidable. But I think the moment people get awkward with that and try to not show you that they try to act normal when they feel a bit off balance, that's when it gets awkward. I think when people would just be more comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're not doing a play together. Like I am acting like I'm not noticing that they're awkward over being awkward, and they are trying to act like they believe that I didn't notice. It's just really tiring, Yeah. And I just realized that when people sometimes people can be really blunt in mentioning his Down syndrome sometimes. And that is not always a nice feeling, but it's less. Yeah. And people feel like they have to show me that they appreciate him. And that's really tiring. I know he's appreciated. Why are you telling? Do you need to tell this? Is this like really something that you need off your chest? Or are you trying to confirm to me that my child has a place in this world? I mean, that's actually, by doing that, you are telling me that you think that maybe I don't know that. And why would I think that? Because it's like not normal that he has a place in this world, So I don't know, when you get extra confirmative with me, I'm awkward. And when you try to hide that you're awkward, it gets awkward. So
it's not an easy conversation to have. And it's not easy probably for people around to get the right angle. It's like mentioning it up front makes you feel uncomfortable. It's like, why do you need to tell me that you see my son with Down syndrome? But when they don't tell you, it also sounds like you're like, yep, you don't have to hide the fact that you saw that Judah has Down syndrome, because we know.
Yeah.
Like we already know.
Yeah.
And he's amazing.
Sometimes it's hard, I had a conversation with a mom. Her son is in my son's class, and her son, I couldn't really box him. Like he has some features of Down syndrome, but not all of them. But he's not autistic, because he looks me right in the eyes, and I can just sense that he can make contact with me. So he's not like, there's children with autism in that group and he just doesn't feel like them. So I was like, it's very clear that my son has Down syndrome. So we were talking about that. And then at some point I was like, yeah, so your son, I was like, because it was about similarities. They both throw stuff and I don't know. And so we were talking about that. And I was like, and your son, like, he has Down syndrome? And she was like, no, he doesn't. We don't really know what he has. We know the chromosome in which things went different, but we don't know, there's not a name for this. And I was like, and then I felt, even though I think my son is beautiful, I did feel like, oh, maybe this is hard for you, because you're like, well, does he look like he has that? You know, even though I think people with Down syndrome are beautiful, I did feel like, oh, I need to clarify myself to you, because now maybe you think that I feel like your son looks like he has Down syndrome, but he doesn't. So I did feel a burden there toward her. So and it took me so much vulnerability and honesty in my own heart to just be able to say, later in the conversation, about 5 minutes later, I got back to the subject and I said, hey, you know, I just sort of assumed that your son has Down syndrome. Maybe it sounded like that, but actually he confused me a bit, because he does have features that I recognize in my own son, but then other features in him don't match. So I was a bit confused about him, and just to mention that I was trying to box him, just openly acknowledging that to her and saying, you know, and this is what I saw, and this is what I wasn't able to place somewhere. And I said, he didn't feel like the autistic children in the class. Like, he feels like different to me. He feels more approachable. It took all the tension off.
Yeah.
Because we do this. And if we're honest about it and we don't think it's wrong, you know, she was not offended at all. Then she told me about, you know, she was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, his eyes look just like your son's and he has a flat nose. And it's not an awkward conversation. But I said, yeah, he does. But he, you know, then other things about him are not Downs. And she's like, yeah, I know, like, it's a total confusion. And we had this conversation without, you know, labeling or son or something, but just, there was no judgment in this. It was just observation, and it was very comfortable. So, and I felt that I really had to, that it just took a lot of honesty to not hide that I had been trying to box her son, which I wasn't boxing him to limit him, but just like, where do you fit into this whole story? And I was just interested. And she could feel that when I was honest about it, you know? So yeah, that was one of the conversations that I felt like, oh, now I have to be the one to be
you're actually
sensitive.
Hey, there's people that come to me either super sensitive and well-informed, or at least asking right questions and, you know, having the right tone. And there's people that are not really there yet. They want to, because they do take the first initiative. They do take the step. They don't just camp out in their own tent, but they actually cross the distance and they come to you. Which is great. Right. Like, they actually do take the effort. Might be for the right reasons, might be for the not so right reasons, because it's like, oh, they're like, I feel pity for them, or I just have to share my compassion, and therefore they need this extra gift because their life is so tough. And then on the other hand, you're experiencing it yourself too, where you're like, oh, there's kids that I don't really know what. So, but it's beautiful how you say, like, oh, I actually have that experience myself too. Like, maybe how people feel that kind of like, oh, I'm doing this. What am I doing? I'm trying to box you in. I'm trying to understand who you are.
Yeah, and you know, the pitfall would have been me saying, after I feel awkward about saying he has Down syndrome and he doesn't, I would be like, oh, he's so beautiful, he's gorgeous, like, to go fall over myself to like tell her that I think he's amazing, and weet je wel, and she can feel the awkwardness in that. I mean, I do think he's gorgeous, but that she knows it's beside the point, you know. So yeah. Then even if I mean it, it won't land, because she feels, well, there's something else going on that you're not mentioning, and people just are we all feel when people are not being real with us. And I think that's, even if real is like, my great grandmother on my husband's side, she calls him, what's the English word? Like, she calls him Mongooltje from Mongolia. You know, that's how it originally was named, because they have the features from people from Mongolia. Yeah. But that turned into a curse word, so now we don't use that anymore. Well, my great grandmother for my husband's side says that.
Yeah.
But I can feel that it comes from such a genuine place that it doesn't hurt me at all. I mean, it does sound a bit like blunt, like, right.
He
But
has a too.
yeah, but then on a deeper level, I'm like, oh man, this just doesn't mean that to you at all. You know, it's just
Yeah.
your medical term. It's old-fashioned medical term that you learned when you were, and you know, idiot used to be a medical term.
Yeah.
We've used it as a curse word for so long that you can't use it anymore.
Yeah.
But then there are people who use the perfect words, but you just feel that they are hiding their awkwardness. And I'd rather have that great grandmother saying the blunt word that sort of tickles me for a bit, but then I feel there's no awkwardness with her. She's so comfortable around him. He's just who he is, you know. And so it's all about the heart. And I think we all feel one another's heart. And even if people you know cover that up with the perfect vocabulary and stuff, you always feel whether it's genuine or not. And if you're genuinely open, you can even use the stupid words and people can still be okay, I think.
Yeah, and still ask the questions like, hey, what does this mean for you?
Yeah, and you've always done that with me, Gerna.
Yes.
You're such so inquisitive always. It's never awkward. You ask a lot of questions and it's never awkward.
Thank you. Well,
how do you do that?
Well, for one, I'm very much aware that I might have assumptions that are not right.
Yeah.
That there's parts that I don't really know. And even recently, like in just some conversations with parents of my Rett syndrome children, where they are my Rett syndrome children, the girls and the women, and some of the boys that I get to support, and that I have the privilege of working with them and seeing them going from not having a voice to getting a voice by all the support that we can give them is just amazing. But it's also becoming aware of, sometimes I come in with a more, I have the answers. I know what to do, because stuff like, instead of I come in humbly and saying like, I have my knowledge and my experience, which I am here to offer you and which I'm here to help you with, or to give you direction or advice if I can help you. But I'm also expecting to learn. And some of it, as a therapist, I do tend to view the other as like, oh, I'm a therapist, I have something to help you with, therefore you are in a condition where you need help.
Right.
For me to make sense, I need you to have a need to need help.
Right. You need your own relevance. Yeah, in a way. Makes total sense.
So my relevance as a therapist is found in the fact that I can help someone else.
Right.
So therefore, I tend to view the parent and the kid as someone that I help, instead of actually putting on new glasses and saying like, hey, you are just as valuable as I am, because you're human, period. And we have both something to bring to this world, and I get to add to your life and you get to add to my life.
But I do think, Gerna, that even though you maybe didn't have language for this before, that it has always been your posture, because this is how you've always spoken about your children. You've always just, they've been such a rich element in your life, and you've always spoken about them that way. So I think in a way your heart always knew this, but maybe you didn't have language to express it the way you're doing that just now.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. I mean, yes, it has been my heart. As I've been diving into it more, I'm like, wow, there's an awareness that I have that I don't make those assumptions, or that I try not to make assumptions. And then still I find myself assuming certain things. Like I'll, for example, think for some of the parents on the parents of kids with Rett syndrome that I have quite good contact with, quite a number of them. And then I'll try to evaluate without asking them, oh, can I send them this email with this information about a certain topic or about a meeting that's coming up, and then I'll think for them and decide for them, probably not, because I know that they're in a tough month because of health conditions or something. And actually learning again, oh, that's what I'm doing. and I'm trying to help, and with my best intentions, I want to protect them from getting an extra overload. On the other hand, I didn't ask them, hey, can I send you an email? And I could actually just position myself in that way instead of assuming for them. And like you said, where people make assumptions and don't speak them out, I think that's where it gets awkward. And when we can learn to become more vulnerable, because it sometimes is vulnerable to say like, hey, I assumed, or like what you said, like, oh, I thought this and it's not, that kind of feels like weird. And now let's just run from the weirdness instead of actually acknowledging like, oh, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to say that. And I hope it didn't come across that way. And if it did, I'm sorry. And actually learning to communicate that. And maybe because of that, discovering of more of it for myself. And I would love to learn just more, because I don't want to ever assume that I know what it means like to live with someone, to have a son or a daughter, or to have, because it's even, I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to Judah right now.
No.
I'm not talking to an adult with Down syndrome. Which hopefully maybe at some point in this podcast, I'll have, those kind of connections and we can do that. Or to someone with Rett syndrome, or just like to interview them about their experience. Right now, a lot of what we do is through the parents. A lot of what I do, like I get.
And we only interpret our own children also with our own lens, through our own lenses and our own preferences, and we definitely project stuff on our children that, would you ask them, would be my thing and not Judah's thing. I don't think he has ever felt anything on that campsite that I felt. I think he was just playing, for example.
So that's just, I think a whole lot about it is about the assumptions, and is about what's the heart of a person, and then it's like being vulnerable, because it is vulnerable to be misunderstood or to say something that someone might be offended by. I think a lot of us want to keep away from that.
And even I was thinking about Judah projecting stuff on him as you were saying this. I was like, maybe even for Judah, because things go through his gut and his heart so much easier than they go through his brain. Maybe he would even feel somebody's awkwardness and not even judge it, and be like, wow, they feel that or something. And I think even for me, to not even judge someone trying to hide their awkwardness, that would also be beautiful. So for you also in a way, it's space to be made for both people. It's not like everybody has to just create room for parents of children with special needs. It's also the other way around, that people that are in a way connected to someone with special needs or have them need to make room for the fact that other people don't always know how to deal with it. We have to always make room for one another, and it's always a two-way street. And so even when you feel like, can people just understand me? That would be so nice. Yeah, well, can you just understand the other people? That would also be so nice. And right?
Yep.
So it's not only your job, Gerna, to be aware of your own assumptions, and you shouldn't also you shouldn't feel like you should judge yourself for it. Also, I don't know if you do, but it's also just totally fine to have them. And even if you don't always recognize them in yourself, that even should be something that you can do.
Yeah, it's.
there needs to be room for that.
Yes, and I'm. It's not a. Like you said, like I'm not judging myself. I'm just becoming aware of like, oh, I had certain assumptions.
Yeah.
And if they're not right, and if the other person communicates to me, hey, I would have wished you could, you would have done this, then my response to be just, oh, I'm sorry, and move from it, and not try to, walk on eggshells and kind of be be everywhere just super sensitive and not make any mistakes, because we're going to make mistakes and we're going to be
Definitely.
awkward.
And I love this conversation, because for me it's like a metaphor, or how do you say it? Like in small, it's like this happens all day in the whole world. You have this. There's always misunderstandings between people from different groups or backgrounds or profiles. And the conversation that we're having now about assumptions, but also about that my self-awareness is actually my own problem. I need to mature so I can be on a field and camp there and not be so self-aware all the time. It's my story. That's my thing. It's not the thing. Even if everyone would stare at me all day, that's my story. That what that does to me is my part. And on the other hand, yeah, you're all staring at me. Have you? That's your part. So, but it's not. I don't have any control over that. But it's. And this conversation, is relevant for so many misunderstandings between different groups of people. So I really love this podcast because it's a very concrete area, framework in which you can discuss these things that are not so sensitive in a way and not so politically loaded, and that's good. It's like a metaphor for so many misunderstandings between, we're polarizing as a society, and I really love that special needs is actually maybe one area in which you can discuss these things without blowing up.
And in discovering, like, oh, there's a world that I don't know, there's a life that I don't know, or at least that I don't know that much about. Can you tell me? Like, I would love to just spend time with you and experience some of it. So what would you say, like you said already, like you're, just talking to one of the parents at school for your son, for Judah, like talking with one of the other parents and actually just being open and sharing with them, oh, I thought this, and then having to navigate through that awkwardness and being like, okay, let's be brave and actually communicate what I tried to say, or that I do feel awkward. And that already made such an impact and a difference. What would you think are more or other solutions if you would go into like what direction should this go into?
Well, there's a beautiful thing about it that, for example, there's a Facebook page. It's called D Mamas. It's Down Mamas. And it's very interesting that all cultures are like a group there, because we share something. We all have children with Down syndrome. And so whatever culture you're from, you are part of this family. So in a way, these distinctions, they also create unity, where normally there would not be unity as easily. We are so approachable from different cultures. Like there are so many cultures in this group, so many different mothers, but you never feel this really, because it's always we understand a part of one another's life so well.
And you're not divided because of political, you're not divided because of race, you're not divided because of countries where you live, you're not divided because of
religion.
And there's a beautiful unity there.
Yeah, so this is beautiful, right? That diversity also creates unity. And so that's one aspect of it. And the other is that I think that what's essential is actually people being connected to their own hearts and being able to be honest about who they are and where they stand. If that happens, if we're not trying to be better than we are, and if we can just be honest about our own humanity, then there's room for someone else to be human. So if you are awkward with someone with the humanity of someone with the Down syndrome, it just always means that you're in a way awkward with your own humanity. And I think that if you are really connected to your own humanity and all the strengths and weaknesses that are part of it, you can see someone else as fully human with his own strengths and weaknesses. And you don't have to overemphasize the strengths. Like people with Down syndrome are always so happy. Like, why does everybody want to say that all the time? Like, we have to point out something good about people with Down syndrome. Like, they're just human, He's sometimes happy. Sometimes he pulls his sister's hair 20 times a day. And, he feels everything. That's, of course there are common denominators. Like he's so sensitive to the atmosphere, and when we're laughing, he just throws himself on the floor laughing. And when I yell at my husband, he gets like, he tries to laugh, but he needs to cry. It's it goes through his marrow and his bones. Like it's
yes.
So and that's him, and that's his humanity, and he has a sense of humor in his own way. He just makes jokes all the time, and he loves music, and and so when you're okay with your own humanity, that you get awkward when things are unfamiliar and you don't know how to box them because you're human, and that would really help. And I think so, and I think that all comes down to the Brené Brown vulnerability gospel. Right.
Yeah.
So I think the
power of imperfection.
And just Judah always makes it because of Judah, it's so easy for me to see whether people are able to be whole if they're one piece. I can just tell by the way they approach Judah. So he's like a filter. So easily people who can come across in any intellectual meeting as if they have it all together can get so awkward with Judah, and you're like, wow, you can act so well, but actually you're so pieced up. And some people, like, they talk and you're like, whoa, I don't know, like your political spectrum and the ideas you have about society. I mean, if you put those on Twitter, you would get haters. But then they get with Judah, they are so comfortable. You can be so human with them. And I'm like, whoa, you're a human in one piece.
And it's authentic.
It's you're authentic, and Judah feels it. And I can see it in the way you approach him. And so actually that is so much more important. And I think if we would all be authentic, someone with a crazy political view wouldn't even be a threat to us, So for me, it's a really big thing that sort of gets pushed to the surface by the way Judah is.
That's beautiful that he actually, with him being your son, being your firstborn, brings you to understand, like, wait, it's about authenticity.
Yeah. And then I have a friend, and I can say this, when he was just born, I have a friend, she got through a lot in her life, lost her brother, lost her mother, only as her father left. Like, she can say stuff, so she knows this. Like, she knows that people know what, we all know that she knows what suffering is, so she doesn't need to prove that. And then he was just born, and 4 days after his birth, she visited us. We got back from the hospital, and she had a bag full of music instruments, and she was like, there's this band in the Netherlands that's for disabled people. and it's called the Josti band, right? And I mean, Josti would be a curse word when I was, a teenager. We would say Josti to someone. I mean, I don't know. I've done this I've done all these things. And she's like, yeah, we just bought him a lot of music instruments so he can practice for the Josti band. and just even, be able, you can laugh about Judah as you laugh about other people. You don't have to not laugh about him because he has Down syndrome. Even that, it's even being comfortable with that even gives him more dignity, actually. Not laugh about. I had another situation where someone was just mocking his cognitive abilities. Like he wanted to throw himself off a couch because he couldn't understand the danger of it. And someone tried to keep him from it, and he did it again, and then the person sort of let him fall almost. So like, oh, did you get off the couch? Well, there you have it. And that's not funny, right?
Yeah.
But this was hilarious. I don't know how to explain the difference, but I think you can feel the difference. It's like either holding Judah responsible for abilities that he doesn't have is not funny.
Yeah.
But to just see him as a person and say, well, you practice away for the Josti band. Yeah, that's hilarious.
And value him for what he's going to do, and not necessarily box that in as less than, but just different.
That's so what you're saying, because that's exactly what it was. She already pointed towards what he was able to do by giving him these instruments, and not being awkward about that was probably going to be the Josti band and not a normal band, as if that's less.
Yeah,
she was like, well, that's amazing. It's not less than, we can just call it for what it is. Whereas that other person was mocking something that Judah couldn't understand, and that didn't feel well.
Yeah, because she didn't put it into comparison, like, oh, he's never going to go to maybe conservatory and be like, the new best pianist. Who knows? Could still happen. Like he might
Yeah.
actually have his own piano albums, because I do know that he, likes to go on the piano. Who knows what's going to be in the future?
Yeah.
But not coming from that angle of like, oh, it's less than, or oh yes, of course you don't know these things, but like no, this is actually going to be great, because that's going to be a lot of fun to be part of a band like that, and to be part of, like, if at all he would go there, like, and if it would be his preference once he grows up and sees that. But yeah, I love how it's kind of all circles around what's our heart posture towards people. What's our heart posture when we meet people, and when we interact with Yuda, when we interact with you as a mom, with your family, and how that is just so important. And being aware, or being okay with the fact that sometimes it's just a little awkward, and we don't know, and we don't have control over how the other person's going to respond to us, and that can feel vulnerable and imperfect. But I like what you said, like how Brene Brown also puts that in her books and her work, like there's power in vulnerability and in imperfection, that adds so much to our life if we are able to embrace that, and if we're able to be okay with that it's not all about perfect, that it's not all about never being tired because of having 2 kids under 3.
Or even because he has Down syndrome, and I can be it's okay. I find that hard to admit, but
like, and that's and being honest about that, and having that in friendship, where friends can actually just also be there for you in the midst of that, I think is hopefully I can be that friend to you in the years to come, where it's like, oh, it's just a tough season, or oh, it's no, actually we're good. And it's amazing to me. Like, I feel just so privileged seeing so many lives, being part of so many lives, so many friends that are somehow affected by some kind of what we then all box into this term of special needs, by saying, as if I don't have special needs, I have needs.
Yeah, you do. And so do I.
Yes. And so some of them you don't have. So therefore, am I special or not? Like, we all have needs. It's not about proving the world that we don't have needs. And I think that might also be something that be part of the uncomfortableness that we sometimes experience, because they wear on their outside maybe some of their needs much more than we are doing. And there's a beautiful invitation to be okay with that. Like, yes, I do have needs. I need friends. I need people to call me out. I need a whole lot of everything. And just be okay with that. And that feels vulnerable.
Really beautiful how you just make it even bigger and say that we all have special needs, because it's so true. And I also was thinking about how you said that it all comes down to our heart posture, and how you're so right, but how it is so easy to deceive yourself and say that you have a great heart posture when you don't. And I was really moved by your level of honesty when you could easily tell yourself, well, I'm helping someone by not sending them an email because I don't want to burden them, and then even going deeper and being like, why am I doing this? Is it actually love? Is it loving to decide for them whether they can handle something or not? And even be able to admit, well, maybe it's not, maybe I'm deciding something for them. Whereas you could easily tell yourself that you have a great heart posture.
I'm just such a good therapist, and I'm doing this for them. Yes, right? No.
Yeah. So I mean, heart posture, but not the surface level.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think for us, we analyze these things, and I've met a lot of people who don't analyze this, but it's just a gut position that they have that comes out rough, but it's really whole. So it has different faces, but
it's about a search
and
for
people with special needs feel that just as well as anyone. They feel just as well if they're approached with with dignity or patronizingly, or they just really feel it. We all feel this.
I think that's really and then we need to close. I mean, I know we can talk for
Yeah, no.
hours, and we might just schedule another one to just talk more. That it's about that, like, do I see someone and do I feel this need to patronize them, or do I feel this need to actually just see them as a person and see them with dignity? And do I see them as a valuable person? And if we can see the other person that's different than us, where we don't necessarily recognize a whole lot of ourselves in them, but still see them as someone with value, with incredible value, that's where I think we're gonna just get to a better place altogether as a society, and not being segregated in having special facilities for people because of their needs and because we want to help them in the best way possible, but to actually integrate and make it inclusive for everyone, regardless of their needs, regardless of their capacities, and go there. So
that's a big vision.
Yes, I do have some dreams, but
you do dream big.
One podcast at a time. We'll see what we can chip away and it can come out. But so thank you for now. Thank you for this first conversation. I just feel right now I'm like, we might just dive into this again a couple more times and see what other topics we can explore, because it's just really, really good to think about it more and go into what it means to live with special needs and to live with the uncertainty that it sometimes brings for all of us, and the awkwardness that we might experience. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.